I never imagined that a single day could split my life into a before and an after. Yet that was exactly what happened the afternoon my son and his bride decided to marry on my farm without ever asking me. My name is Elena Marquez, and this is how I discovered, at 70 years old, that respect isn't a favor a mother hopes for. It's a right she must demand. For 40 years I cleaned other people's houses. Every morning before dawn, I tied my hair back, slipped on rubber gloves, and scrubbed floors until my knees burned. Every coin I saved had a destination, the small piece of land I dreamed of owning. I wanted a place where I could plant fruit trees, listen to birdsong, and grow old with dignity. 5 years ago, when I finally signed the deed for this farm, I thought I had arrived at peace. I built a porch, planted a mango tree with my own hands, and told myself, this is where I will be free. But freedom is a strange thing. It looks solid until someone decides it belongs to them. Over those 5 years, my son Daniel and his fiancée Clara slowly began treating the farm like an extension of their own lives. At first, it was small things, birthday parties, barbecues, and weekends with the grandchildren. Then it became bigger, decorations, invitations, plans made without asking. By the time the wedding invitations went out, my name had been reduced to a line on an envelope. Farm of Elena Marquez. No call, no question, no courtesy. Just an assumption. I found out about the wedding the same way everyone else did, by accident. On a Tuesday morning, the florist phoned to confirm the delivery of flowers for the event. What event? I asked, confused. That's when I learned my property had been promised to 200 guests. My blood ran cold. I had given up decades of my life to own this place, and now I was being treated as a housekeeper on my own land. I could have screamed. I could have canceled everything. Instead, I chose something more powerful, a lesson. That same day, I rented the farm to a corporate event organized by Martin Cruz, a polished event planner from a company called Summit Prestige Events. They had a contract, a deposit, and a right to be there, and they were going to be there on the exact same day as the wedding. My son and Clara didn't know what hit them when trucks began to arrive carrying banners, chairs, and buffet tables. At first they were angry, then they were desperate. I remained calm. Respect would be taught, and this was my classroom. The morning of the wedding felt like a storm disguised as a sunrise. Vendors rushed around like ants. Martin barked orders to his staff, while Father Tomas, our long-suffering parish priest, tried to soothe everyone with his gentle voice. My porch became my watchtower. From there, I could see two worlds colliding, corporate efficiency on one side, frantic wedding chaos on the other. I sipped my coffee and let the lesson unfold. To their credit, Daniel and Clara eventually stopped protesting. They realized that if they wanted their ceremony at all, they would have to negotiate. By noon, we had an agreement. Summit Prestige would hold its event until 4:30 p.m., and the wedding would begin after, under my rules. Chairs would be rearranged, the altar would be set beneath my mango tree, and the bride and groom would publicly acknowledge that this farm had an owner with a name. As the executives wrapped up their meeting, curiosity replaced annoyance. They lingered, fascinated by the idea of witnessing a family wedding immediately after a corporate conference. It was as if two movies were playing on the same screen, business suits blending with wedding dresses, PowerPoint presentations giving way to vows. The air felt electric, full of an unplanned drama no scriptwriter could invent. By late afternoon, the transformation was complete. The sun dipped low, washing the fields in gold. Clara's dress, though smudged from a day of running and crying, still glimmered under the light. Daniel had fixed his tie and smoothed his hair, regaining some dignity. The 200 guests, now a mix of family, friends, and executives, took their seats in a strange but functional arrangement. Corporate chairs alongside wedding chairs, polished name tags next to delicate bouquets. Father Tomas, seasoned by decades of unpredictable ceremonies, managed to create a solemn atmosphere that felt both improvised and beautiful. I sat quietly at the edge, watching it unfold. The vows were lovely. The mango tree, planted with my own tired hands 3 years earlier, arched above them like a witness. But my heart wasn't on the words of eternal love. My heart was on what would come after. The toast. The story. The truth. I had rehearsed it in my mind all day, a speech that would travel through every future family gathering like a legend. This was not revenge. It was education. When Father Tomas pronounced, "You may kiss as husband and wife," the applause exploded like fireworks. 200 people cheering, executives mingling with emotional relatives, children laughing, cameras flashing. The wedding that almost didn't happen was happening, and on my terms. Then Martin appeared at my side with a glass of champagne and a wireless microphone. "Mrs. Marquez, it's time for your toast," he said. My pulse raced. This was my moment. I rose slowly, gripping the microphone with hands that had scrubbed 1,000 floors. They did not tremble. I walked to the center where everyone could see me. The chatter dimmed. Faces turned. A hush spread like a ripple. "Good evening, everyone," I began. My voice sounded stronger than I had ever heard it. "I'm Elena Marquez, Daniel's mother and the owner of this beautiful farm where we are celebrating today." Warm applause greeted my words. So far, nothing unusual, but I wasn't there to be polite. "I want to thank you all for joining us on this special day," I continued. "Although I must confess, I found out there would be a wedding here the same way you did, by invitation." A murmur of confusion rose from the crowd. Eyes darted between me and the couple. "Yes," I said evenly. "My son and his fiancée sent out 200 invitations with my farm's address without ever consulting me." The murmur became silence. Daniel and Clara flushed red. Still, I spoke calmly. "I found out on Tuesday morning when the florist called to coordinate decorations. Imagine my surprise discovering that my property had been committed for an event I didn't know existed." The executives, veterans of hard negotiations, began to smile. They recognized someone drawing a boundary. "For 40 years I worked as a housekeeper to buy this farm," I said, my voice cracking but steady. 40 years saving penny by penny, dreaming of a place where I could live with dignity. And for 5 years I have lived here, treated as a housekeeper on my own property. The silence deepened until I could hear the wind in the trees. "When I found out what had happened, I made a decision," I went on. "I rented my farm for a corporate event on the same day as the wedding to teach my son and daughter-in-law that this property has an owner, and that owner is me." Several guests nodded in approval. But at the end of the day, family love is stronger than hurt pride. And although it was necessary to go to this extreme to get the respect I deserve, here we are celebrating Daniel and Clara's love in my house, on my terms, with my rules. This time the applause was different. It wasn't polite. It was admiration, recognition, respect. I lifted my glass. "So I toast to the bride and groom, who today learned that respect for parents is not optional, that consideration for others is fundamental, and that mothers also have rights and feelings. To Daniel and Clara, may they begin their marriage understanding the value of mutual respect." The response was thunderous. 200 people celebrating not only a wedding, but a lesson. The executives applauded with professional appreciation. Older relatives nodded. Even the younger guests seemed to sense they were witnessing something extraordinary. Daniel approached, tears shining in his eyes, and embraced me in front of everyone. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered. "Sorry it took us so long to understand." Clara followed, her dress dusty, her tears of shame mingled with gratitude. "Thank you for saving the wedding despite everything," she murmured. "We'll never forget this lesson." And in that moment, beneath my mango tree and the fading sun, I felt a power I had never known before, a power that came not from anger, but from dignity. Yet I also knew the night was far from over, and my life from that day on would never be the same. The celebration that followed was like nothing I had ever seen. Music spilled out from the speakers Summit Prestige had left behind, mixing with laughter and the clink of glasses. The executives who had stayed for curiosity now mingled freely with my relatives, exchanging business cards and compliments. It felt surreal, 2 worlds overlapping on my porch, a kind of improvised festival born from a misunderstanding and my determination to correct it. I floated through it all, accepting congratulations, kisses on the cheek, and whispered words from women who pressed my hand as if my courage could pass into their veins. I kept smiling, but inside I felt something different, calm, For years I had swallowed my frustration like bitter tea. That night after my toast, it dissolved. I was no longer the silent servant at the edge of family gatherings. I was the hostess. I was Elena Marquez, the woman who had built her dream and defended it. Later, when the last song ended and the children were asleep in their parents' arms, Martin approached me again. He shook my hand with the warmth of someone closing a deal. "Mrs. Marquez," he said, "after what I witnessed today, I'd like to offer you an exclusive contract. Your farm and your presence are exactly what our clients look for." He slid a neat folder across the table. Terms, prices, schedules. I didn't sign immediately. I simply looked at the paper, feeling its weight, the quiet echo of decades spent mopping marble floors in houses that were never mine. I thought, so this is what respect feels like, solid, tangible. When the guests were gone and the stars began to pierce the sky, I sat alone on my porch. In my lap rested two things I hadn't had when I woke that morning: a contract that could turn my farm into a prosperous business and the absolute respect of my family. But what filled me most wasn't either of those. It was a certainty. The certainty that no one, no child, no guest, no company would ever again treat me as less than I am. The certainty that Elena Marquez wasn't just the self-sacrificing mother, the complacent grandmother, the family's unpaid caretaker. She was the owner of her destiny, the lady of her house, the author of her own story. And this story had just begun its most beautiful chapter, the chapter where I finally respected myself enough to demand others respect me too. At 70 years old, I had learned the most important lesson of my life. Love without respect is not true love, and teaching respect, though painful, is the greatest gift a mother can give her children. 6 months have passed since the most talked about wedding in town, and my life has changed in ways I never imagined. Each morning, I wake up with a feeling I never knew before, being in control of my own existence. The events business has flourished beyond my wildest dreams. Martin kept his promise. My farm is now the most exclusive place in the region for elegant weddings and corporate meetings. Every weekend, I receive between $3,000 and $5,000 for renting my property, money that has given me a financial independence I never had, not even when I was working double shifts as a housekeeper. But the most beautiful thing is not the money. The most beautiful thing is the respect. Daniel and Clara have kept their word religiously. Every month they deposit the $1,000 in rent on time, and they never, not once, show up without consulting me first. When they want to use the farm for a family celebration, they call weeks in advance, politely asking if the date is available and waiting for my answer without assuming anything. The first time Daniel did it, 4 months ago, I almost cried with emotion. "Mom," he said one Thursday afternoon, "could you check your calendar? We want to celebrate Clara's birthday at the farm next Saturday, if that's okay with you. And if you don't have other plans." Words I had waited 5 years to hear. Even more moving is the way they treat me when they're here. I'm no longer the housekeeper who prepares food and cleans up after parties. Now I'm the respected hostess, the owner of the house, who sits at the head of the table while they take care of serving and cleaning. The first time Clara insisted on washing the dishes after a family dinner, I was so surprised I didn't know what to do. "Elena, you worked enough preparing this delicious meal. We'll take care of the cleanup," she said. It was like living in a parallel world where I was finally treated as the matriarch I always should have been. The grandchildren still visit me often. Clara never carried out her threat to keep them away, and now I understand why. The children need their grandmother as much as I need them. But even that relationship has shifted. They now see me not as the submissive grandmother who always gave in, but as the powerful grandmother who demanded respect. In their eyes, I can feel a new kind of pride. The whole town knows my story. For months, I was the topic of conversation at the market, at church, everywhere. Women sought me out to tell their own stories of family disrespect. "Elena, how did you find the courage to stand up for yourself?" My neighbor Iris asked each time we met. My answer was always the same. I didn't find the courage. I built it day by day every time I decided I deserved something better. And it's true. It wasn't a moment of sudden bravery. It was years of accumulated humiliations until I finally said, "Enough. Since then, I've received 3 marriage proposals from widowers in town who admire my strong character and independence. I politely thank them, but explain that at 70, I have finally learned to be happy with myself, and I wouldn't trade that happiness for anything. My farm has become a symbol. Young women come to me for advice on setting boundaries with their families. Older mothers tell me they used my story to teach their adult children respect. Even Father Tomas mentions my case in his sermons about honoring one's parents. Martin's corporate event business has become a prosperous partnership. I now have events scheduled until the end of the year, and the waiting list to rent my farm is 3 months long. Major companies, wealthy families, even regional celebrities have discovered this little paradise I built with 40 years of sweat and tears. And yet, every night when the guests leave and the lights go out, I sit on my porch with a cup of coffee and look at the stars with a satisfaction I never knew before. It's not just the satisfaction of money earned or respect conquered. It's the profound satisfaction of knowing I am finally who I always should have been. I'm no longer Elena, the housekeeper. I am no longer Elena, the self-sacrificing mother who suffers in silence. I am no longer Elena, the compliant grandmother who accepts anything to avoid conflict. Now I am Elena Marquez, a successful businesswoman, a respected matriarch, a woman who stood up for herself when it seemed too late to change things. Elena, who taught her children that true love includes respect, and that respect is not begged for. It is demanded. Every night before I fall asleep, I whisper a small prayer of thanks. Not for the wedding that almost got canceled, not for the conflict that almost destroyed the family, but for having had the courage at 70 to write the end of my own story instead of letting others write it for me. Because it is never too late to start respecting yourself, and it is never too late to teach others how they should treat you. This is my story. This is my victory. This is my life, finally lived on my own terms.